What's up, everyone? This is Goldilocks, former TNA backstage interviewer, manager, and you're listening to TNA Cross the Line podcast. Thanks for being here.
TNA Wrestling, Cross the Line.
Happy New Year! It's episode 26 of the TNA Cross the Line podcast. I am Bob Colling Jr. With me, as always, is Dallas Gridley. And yeah, sure, in real time, it is now 2021. But for the TNA Cross the Line podcast, we're like 18 years behind. We're entering 2003. The year in review episode of this week, we're going to be highlighting 2002. Some of our Dallas has had a whole bunch of awards here. And I'm sure we're going to talk about what we like and didn't like for the first 6 months or so. It's not even a full year, plus the 2 weeks where they didn't have any shows. So it's probably really about 5 months worth of content.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Between all the weeks that there wasn't shows, it starts like end of June. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe we should rethink the name of this episode. Is it really a year in review?
The half year end awards.
Yeah, the almost half year, we kind of made it through a year without going bankrupt, and we're moving on in review.
Yeah. Now, the conclusion of 2002 saw the official formation of Sports Entertainment Extreme. I've mentioned it several times before. If you were to technically spell Sports Entertainment Extreme the way that Vince Russo told us to, it wouldn't spell out sex. It would spell out C-S-E-E.
Which, in a way,
he didn't specify that extreme with an X.
Yeah, and I guess like we see him, so it could still work.
Yeah.
Which I do think that is so funny. I mean, looking back on that promo, he's like, "Sports Entertainment Extreme, spell it out," and it's like,
Yeah.
Okay. And he's like, sex. It's like, oh, what?
Right. I don't think he knows how to spell extreme. Because if you say it, extreme, I guess you maybe think there's an X.
Yeah, but, okay, now if maybe he should have came up with like a shirt on that just said sex, or like, which I know they eventually have a shirt, but, like, show something off or show something on the screen. You got a screen in the arena. I don't know. If you were going to try to spell some weird shit like that, you got to kind of mix it up. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, Bob, we really ended 2002 with a bang. I mean, that last episode was pretty good to end the year with. They're on December 18th.
Yeah, we had a good six-man tag between the SATs and Red taking on the returning Christopher Daniels, Low-Key, and Elix Skipper. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for excitement, I would say that the final episode for 2002 kind of gives you high hopes for the potential heading into 2003.
Yeah, and you know what? I guess, like, thinking about those three returning, I'm wondering if maybe maybe they purposely held off Elix Skipper coming back because they knew they wanted to do this with him. I know, obviously, Daniels and Low-Key, we knew were in Japan and, like, doing stuff there. But I'm wondering if maybe they knew what they wanted to do with Skipper, so they were like, we'll wait and we'll hold off to bring you back until it's time to do this thing. Because, I mean, he kind of disappeared for a while, and he was doing some good stuff. Even like the little mini feud he did with Monty Brown, which I forgot about until literally this second.
Oh, yeah. Where he beat him up with yellow paint in the parking lot.
Yeah, dude, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. He also was loosely affiliated with Jarrett.
Yes.
In a feud with Scott Hall and it was Jarrett and Lawler?
Yeah, it was like Jarrett, Lawler, and Killings at the time, wasn't it? And they were all like...
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't do much of anything. It was definitely a loose association, and that was kind of what happened with that. Like, nothing really ended up happening.
Yeah. No, it seemed like that might have been an attempt to elevate him and then they might have just scrapped it.
Yeah. And for those who are tuning in this episode thinking, well, why aren't they talking about the show they're going to watch? Well, in case you didn't hear what Bob said in the beginning, we are reviewing the year 2002. We're going to kind of discuss, and it's definitely going to be more conversational. We're going to talk about what we liked about 2002, what we didn't like, and I think I posted it on social media at some point too. But if you think about like the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Awards, that's kind of what we're going to kind of base our conversation on. And I think it's going to be really interesting. And even like I just said, thinking about that Elix Skipper and Monty Brown thing, I didn't even think about that when I'm like trying to think about some of these things that happen. So I'm excited to kind of talk things through with you and kind of remember things you might remember differently than I will. And I think that's going to be really fun to kind of get into it that way and remember stuff that it's like, oh, I forgot that even happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit that happened in the roughly 5 months or however many weeks of TNA. They threw a lot of shit at the wall to kind of see what would stick. So, well, I mean, do you want to start off with one of your topics or awards or however you want to describe it?
I believe the order I have them written down in is the same order I sent them to you and Bob. So I don't know if you have them in front of you, but my first one that I have written down is the most shocking moment. And now in 2002, I would say we had a pretty decent amount of those. Some of the ones I wrote down that I would consider some of the top shocking moments are, I think, I'm just going to say it already. I think the most shocking was potentially Vince Russo unmasking as Mr. Wrestling 3. And that took place, that was on the November 20th show when he revealed the pay-per-view 22. Also, I wrote down Ron Killings defeating Ken Shamrock on August 7th at pay-per-view 8 for the title. I mean, I don't think, if you're an average fan watching at the time, I don't think we would have assumed that at that time Ron Killings would have won the title. Mm-hmm. How could we possibly forget Puppet pulling out a gun on Jeff Jarrett on the July 30th pay-per-view 7 show? And then the last one I wrote down, and I know there's more, is at the end on pay-per-view 26, December 18th, when they started destroying the TNA Asylum and Vince Russo took an axe to the sign. Yeah. Like, I think that was pretty shocking too. So, I mean, that's just kind of some of the ideas I was thinking about when, I mean, like I said, the first one that came to my head, Vince Russo taking off that mask. So what were you kind of, some of the shocking moments that you had thought of?
Well, the Vince Russo one for sure. I also had Puppet having a gun. That was just horrifying.
Well, and on that too, remember the crowd went literally dead silent. Like
stunned.
We're watching the show, and this dude pulls out a gun, and the crowd's like, and you could hear a pin drop in the arena.
Yeah, and it affected them it affected the whole show.
Yeah, like I still kind of can't believe that was even a thing that happened on these shows that we watched. Like it was unreal.
Yeah, that was really insane. Ron Killings winning the NWA World Championship, as you mentioned, against Ken Shamrock. I really think that at the time, K-Quick defeating Ken Shamrock for any championship, let alone the NWA World Championship, was a complete and utter shock. So I think that definitely deserves a mention. Maybe like in a match sense, I would say Malice falling off the ladder through a table on the floor.
Oh. Yeah, because I remember when we watched that, we could not believe, Malice, who's got to be pushing close to 7 foot, I would assume, right? It's higher. I mean, this dude's falling off a ladder.
That's a good question. I wonder what he was billed as. I don't think he
actually is, but he's got to be at least 6'5", right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's probably realistically 6'7", 6'8", maybe.
Yeah, so you got this big-ass guy, gets tipped off of a ladder, going down through a table. Okay, so he's billed at 6'8".
Yeah.
So, okay, I was closer than I thought, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, that was insane.
Yeah, I mean, that was nuts. And I'm surprised that, I mean, he did briefly come back and then slipped off the top rope.
Yeah, and that's
or maybe that was before he left. But regardless, he did slip off the top rope, and that was
no, that was when he came back. That was this like second match back, and it was kind of like, oh, there goes that.
What about the Harris brothers wearing a Nazi shirt?
Oh my
After
God.
shocking?
It's shocking in a bad way.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I've listened to other TNA podcasts out there just to kind of see other people's reactions to things, and a lot of people use Impact Plus, which you should. It's there for a reason, even though I still don't think it's working for Dallas as of this recording.
Nope. And I've
Didn't think
emailed
so.
them twice. And
Yeah. But they, obviously have edited it off of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not aware of that even happening,
Which
I
is
think
pretty crazy. And
surprising.
speaking of that specific pay-per-view, we also had there was like different segments with the Dups that got taken out because they were like saying stuff about Puppet and stuff like that. They were scared of him and everything like that. So there's like even like backstage segments not on that show. It was really interesting once I found that out. Like I guess I didn't expect it to get pulled, but it did.
Right.
And that was was that like a last man standing match or something like that between those two? Is that what it was?
With what Ron and Malice or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the last man standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, no. So if you've never seen it, first off, I think you can find it on like Daily Motion. If you just type in Malice versus Down Here, if you really, really need to see this match, you can find it. However,
I'm not endorsing that. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
No, not in the slightest.
And I think if you even think about this is just, I would say, shocking in a different sense, but they brought a lot of legends in that I guess I wouldn't have necessarily expected a new company to be started bringing in. We saw like Harley Race get hit with that chair.
Oh, he got murdered with a chair. We saw the Road Warriors.
The Road Warriors, holy shit! And that's like fresh in our mind. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that slid. Yeah, they slid in. There's a lot of shocking moments.
And I think,
for this company within 5 months, like it's insane.
Well, and I think that's I think that in wrestling, that kind of stuff is what kind of keeps people coming back to. And
yeah, but if you do so many in 5 months, does it kind of kill that?
Well, in a way, it's to the point where we're forgetting shit. So yes,
well,
I would say then yeah, but at the same time, I want to see more. And like what we saw so much stuff happen in 2002, heading into 2003, when I know there's going to be even more surprises, including one of my favorites. I cannot wait, and I'm just like ready. So I guess it depends, because it's definitely these guys. It's definitely.
Would you consider Kurt Hennig coming in as a shocking moment?
Absolutely, I think that's a great one too.
Yeah,
especially when you were discussing kind of his timeline, because he was just in like the Royal Rumble earlier in the year. Obviously, he had some time off and stuff, but I think that was a pretty big moment as well. So yeah, I think people coming in like that into this new company who some weeks looked like they didn't have a light bill on, and they were using like little construction lamps to light the arena, then to bring in people like Kurt Hennig, who are pretty big names. We saw Scott Hall a lot, and Six Pac came in and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely had a lot of shocking moments. But I'm gonna go back to it. I'm gonna say it again. Vince Russo being under that mask, even though we knew he was in that company the whole time, was pretty good.
Absolutely, and he's without question the top heel in the company. He's the leader of sex. The only negative for that is that he's not going to get physical, so it's pretty much impossible for baby faces to get heat on him or whatever. And obviously having the stable of men with them kind of keeps him shielded. And it's weird to say that stuff for a professional wrestling writer and not an active performer, but
yeah, I think having a group though is kind of helping him in this case. Like I feel like if he was just, it's Vince Russo, he's here, whether or not he's an authority figure or not. Well, yeah, he could have a group, but I feel like I feel like if he's just there, then it's even less effective. But since he kind of has these guys that kind of do his bidding, essentially, I think that it's not the end of the world that he is the top heel in a way, because there is people that can kind of take that beating for him.
Yeah.
And I do not want to see him in a match, absolutely not. But even seeing the little segments where we saw Ron Killings attack him after the show and start hitting him and stuff like that, stuff kind of still got me excited that they got to hit him.
Right. I mean, I could see his overness helping out guys like Daniels, Low-Key, and Skipper too, if they were to effectively have that rub off on them, I guess.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
So there are potential. I mean, there's a lot of potential with Sports Entertainment Extreme to elevate heels because, really, for the most part, they're very depleted ever since on the heel side now that Jeff Jarrett has effectively turned babyface since winning the NWA World Championship. I mean, Ron Killings now is a babyface too. So there's very limited people outside of sex that are viable on the heel side. Well, your next topic or award, I will say award. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
is the most disappointing moment thus far. I got two of them.
So I also have two, and
I don't think they're going to be the same.
No, they're not. And you know what? I'm glad about that because this was one I was even disappointed in myself. I couldn't think of something I was even more disappointed in. Now, admittedly, off air, I mentioned to Bob that I wish I was able to put more time in. If I had the extra time, I was going to go through every single pay-per-view card and look at every single little detail again. I just didn't have the time for that, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah. But so go ahead. I want you to go ahead first with this because I'm very curious.
Well, I'm really curious now what you're thinking because
one of mine's really funny.
Okay, so I kind of took this as disappointed for what I watched, not necessarily not like a booking decision or anything of that nature, just what I watched. So one of mine is Puppet jerking off into a trash can or in a trash can.
Oh, I mean that's. I was pretty disappointed that I saw that too.
Yeah, that's a pretty disappointing moment for watching a professional wrestling show, that a little person is rapidly jerking off in a garbage can.
In Goldilocks' face, mind you.
Yeah.
And now remember when we even talked to her, we asked about this, and she said, "Nope, I had no idea what was happening." And it was just like, well, that's even worse.
Yeah, that's horrible. My second one isn't even in regards to anything we actually saw on these pay-per-views. It's rather a fact of what you noted, and that's that Alan Funk is no longer with the company.
So it's very interesting that you say that because one of mine actually relates, and I thought it was the funnier one, but I'll say it first. And I thought one of the most disappointing moments was Bruce and Lenny breaking up because I really wanted them to stay as a team.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a really, I think that's really interesting that you said that. And so, then they broke up, which wasn't very long ago. It come to find out, most of my list is stuff that happened later in the year, and that's an interesting thing to point out, which we'll discuss later in the show. But when they broke up November 20th, and that was sad. I was really disappointed. And then Lenny had one more appearance, and then Alan Funk had one more dark match. And that's it.
He also ate out April in the shower.
Oh.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I almost put that in my shocking moment, but I said, you know what? That was bullshit, so I'm not putting that there.
I think the shocking moment for that is that April uses so much shaving cream. It's all over her breasts.
On her boobs. She must have a really hairy chest.
Oh, my God.
My other disappointing moment, and it's so bad that this is it's not an exact moment. Instead, it is the entire tag team title tournament from July 3rd on pay-per-view 3, because that show I thought sucked so bad that I think that tournament was a major disappointment.
I don't need what were the I'll look it up, but what were the
Actually, I have it up right here. I don't know why I have this one open, but I happen to have it open.
You were so mad at it that you had to keep it up.
Yeah, that title tournament consisted of Chris Harris and James Storm facing off against the Johnsons. Buff Bagwell and Apollo versus Rainbow Express. Then it ended up being America's Most Wanted got taken out of the tournament. So then
Right.
Styles and Lynn fought the Rainbow Express in the finale, the finals. And then the other matches on the card were such let's see, Monty Brown versus Anthony Ingram. We had Todd Stone versus Puppet in a hardcore midget match. Taylor Vaughn versus Francine. Ken Shamrock versus Malice in an NWA title match. AJ Styles fought David Young in an X Division title match. And Jeff Jarrett and K-Crush versus Brian Christopher and Scott Hall in the main event in a tag match. And I just remember, like, on paper, it doesn't sound too bad, I feel like. But, dude, I remember we were watching that show, and I was like, holy shit. Like, it was taking so long. And, like, it was just painful to get through. And so I think that's why I wrote that as what I considered probably the most disappointing moment of 2002, just because it was such a bummer. And it kind of goes into the part of, at the time, they didn't have a lot of tag teams. But at the same time, they could have brought some cool names in, and they could have done a little bit more with it instead of having two dicks fight.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know. I was just really bummed out for that show.
Right, yeah, and like they have America's Most Wanted getting taken out, and it ended up being the Hot Shots, and then they got destroyed.
Yeah, which that whole thing was like, oh yeah, it's the Hot Shots. And you want to talk about something else that's disappointing. See, this is why I'm glad we're talking this stuff through here, because do you remember when Bill Behrens and like Jim Miller were tied up backstage with their pants off, and like we don't really know what happened?
Yeah, that was just kind of a dropped angle, I guess.
Yeah, we had that as a dropped angle. Now, do you remember, I think her name was like Alexis. It was like the girl who was handing the money.
Oh, Alicia?
Alicia, I knew it was an A. Alicia's taking money from people like, like Ed Ferrara and I remember
Borash, I think.
Borash, and I remember she did it to Omori right before he was about to fight Ken Shamrock for the title, and that one was super weird to me because you have like a contender for the NWA Heavyweight Championship, and you're making him involved with this gimmick, and it literally went nowhere. To the point where Ed Ferrara, I think, replied to us on Twitter about it, and literally also he was like, I don't know what they were doing either.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what obviously the implying that she was probably an escort.
Oh, absolutely. I think
of some kind. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably better off just being kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into what they were kind of doing in that beginning stages where, like once again, the Johnsons, or two giant penises, which I literally couldn't believe as they come out with the little flap of their masks
Horrible.
on. I mean, it was so bad. That could even be considered a disappointing moment because I don't think they were bad workers, but they were tied in this really bad gimmick that lasted about a couple shows, and that was about it. And then they were. So yeah,
I would even also say only using Joel Gardner for 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think he fit with Rainbow Express, but he probably could have been utilized differently.
He definitely could have been utilized differently. I was looking at his name when I was just looking at this card as well. I think he's definitely someone who could have been used better. Like, I didn't hate it with the Rainbow Express, but like, I think that kind of ties into one of the reasons why he ended up not working out anymore, because it wasn't as good as it could have been. Like, he could have been with someone better.
No, I absolutely agree with you.
And one more, you know what I'm disappointed about, Bob? That the Dup Cup did not continue, and we only had that for like twice, like that.
That was too many times. It was kind of funny and entertaining the first time.
No, it was
like I popped when Borash, the reaction of like, oh, you get a point for decking Borash, and he was just like, what? And then they do, and he just gets knocked out or whatever. Like, that was funny. But when you go to it again, it's like, okay.
No, it was bad. It was really bad. And like, that's the kind of shit that we're gonna, I feel like, keep seeing in TNA, where they're gonna try bullshit, and then it's gonna be like, Oh, do you remember that happened? It's just like Disco Inferno's Jive Talking. Had that
Yeah.
a couple weeks and then that was gone. Whether or not that has to do with just him not appearing anymore or whatever. I mean, I guess it probably got cut during the budget cut phase before Panda came in, but regardless.
I don't think you can have a talk show segment on a pay-per-view that you're purchasing on a wrestling show.
I
That's
think
probably not
I think
helping.
that makes it really tough. I think they could have, if they really wanted to do it, I think they could have done it in the way that they similar to how they do like the Mike Tenay sit down interviews, where
Mm.
it's just kind of like, oh, hey, I talked to him earlier in the day, and it could be like a 2 minute little segment to further a story in some way. But to do
Yeah.
it in the arena in front of the audience, they don't want to see that shit either. Like, come on.
No, I definitely agree with you. What about your promo of the year? I'm assuming you're taking this as a person, not necessarily a segment.
So I did take this as a person
Okay.
talking. So I mean, I think we can kind of discuss however we would like. So I have four things written down.
All right.
Some of them are more or less because I thought it was hilarious, and the rest is actually what I think was probably some of the best. So I'll start off with the lower end of that. I you know I'm wondering what you're gonna say about this, but I wrote when Ron Killing comes out and he like raps to the audience and he pretty much talks shit every night. Like I think that's always really entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of threw that in here of like I feel like it's consistently like, oh shit, he just called the audience a bunch of hillbillies and like stuff. And then when he turns his face, he's saying nice stuff about him or like about himself and stuff. So I added that in here as like a because I think he's a good talker and I think that it should at least be mentioned.
Well, even his racially powered
Yes.
promos earlier in 2002 were pretty good too.
Or yeah, no, they were some really good stuff.
Yeah.
This one is just funny, just because I still make the joke about it. But Jeff Jarrett on like pay per view number one with Jackie Fargo, dude, I I can't like him choking out Jackie Fargo in the back and then yelling at him when he's in the ring. That shit, I'm never gonna forget that now. And like, did I know the name Jackie Fargo really much before this? No, I didn't. And I've seen the first pay per view, but now I'm never gonna forget it
Yeah.
after watching Jeff Jarrett. You Jackie Fargo.
Right.
So I wrote that as like a funny one. That's like I just really enjoyed that. Now onto the ones that I actually thought were potentially two of the best promos of the year. Um, Vince Russo on the final show,
Mm-hmm.
I thought was really well done, and I'm pretty sure that's the one I like the most. The Birth of Sex one wasn't bad, but that one with the Piper stuff, I don't think that's the one I liked more. I like on pay per view 26 when he's reintroducing everyone to Skipper and Low Key and Daniels and saying all this stuff. Like I was pretty and I think just the hype up to that because like in the show before I was like, dude, I can't wait to see what Vince Russo says this week and stuff. So even just the excitement to it, I think really had me enjoying that specific promo. And then the other one, I had to actually do some digging and make sure I got the right one. I made sure I wrote down the date for this one, especially was when America's Most Wanted was backstage with Goldilocks on pay-per-view 20 on November 6th. They were getting really hyped up to fight the Disciples of the New Church. And it was the week after they got choke slammed off the stage and Slash did that first dive off of the balcony.
All right.
And I remember when we watched it even, like being like, whoa, that was a pretty good Chris Harris promo. And then James Storm comes in and it was pretty good too. And I was like, and I listened to it again to make sure I liked it as much as I really did. And yeah, it's the one where like Chris Harris starts yelling and he's like, we're not taking any more shit from anyone.
Yep.
And all that. And I can't remember if it was exactly this show, but it might have been the first time that James Storm also said, sorry about your damn luck. I'd have to double check that, so do not quote me.
I think you're right.
I think there's a really good chance it is the first one,
Yeah.
but I like I said, I'd have to really double check. But it's kind of weird for me to, I feel like, pick like a backstage like interview as the promo of the year for me. But I don't know, man. That one was really good. But that and the Russo one, those are my top two for sure.
Okay, so I kind of took it more as individuals and not necessarily a specific one, though. The ones you mentioned, though, are definitely highlights for the year, I think, without question. I will tell you right now that Jeff Jarrett is not on my list of people because
what do you mean?
he cuts the same fucking promo every goddamn week, whether he's a heel or a babyface.
Wait, you mean that one promo after we had a pretty good show, and then Jeff Jarrett came out and he cut like a 7-minute promo at the end of it, just staring into the camera on the stage? That's not on your list?
No, it was right before his title match with Killings. We're like, okay, this wasn't a bad show, and they're like, well, wait a minute, there's only, like you said, there was still like 6 or 7 minutes left, and then Jeff Jarrett just comes out and cuts a long-winded promo to hype up his match with Ron Killings, who we didn't even see that entire show or anything.
Yes.
So, yeah, he really knows how to bring the show to a screeching halt with his promos. But for me, so I did have Vince Russo, which is kind of surprising because, as you mentioned, the guy has been here on television for less than a month. And he's, without question, one of the best promo guys that they have. Whether you agree with what he's saying or not.
I think absolutely. And that's the thing. And I think that's important that you say that. And, we've discussed it. We've said it many times. And we're critical of his work in general, as we are for everyone. It's not even just him. And we've said it before, that whether or not we necessarily like Vince Russo, I think that he puts in good work. And I think that the things that he is good at and that he's known for, he did a very good job at. And unfortunately, he is just shit on for the things that are bad. And I mean, that's how it is. And I'm turning more into a Vince Russo fan than I ever was before because of some of his work we're seeing here in TNA. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see more because I know he's with the company for a while. Whether or not he's on camera or not, I know he's at least there. So his influence is in this company.
I think that if he's the type of guy that when he talks, you listen and either you enjoy it or you hate yourself for listening to what he says. And I think that kind of makes for a good promo.
Yeah.
Because you're obviously keeping people invested and interested in what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, one week I could really like it. And the next week I could be like, please shut the fuck up. Like it really goes both ways. And I think that's even more interesting because I think as like a, quote, like a smart wrestling fan, like you kind of like the bad guys or you kind of, no matter what, hey, if AJ Styles is a bad guy, I'm going to like whatever he does. Where Vince Russo is the kind of bad guy where some of it I like, but then some of it I'm like, okay, that's right, I don't like you, and I'm not supposed to. So I think that's interesting.
I agree with you with Ron Killings, and I'm really just kind of more referencing his earlier stuff, more cutting edge, like wow, like eyebrow raising kind of comments he would make about various inequalities and stuff like that. And then my last one is Sonny Sayaki.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how I couldn't have put him on my list either. I think
I think Sayaki is probably the most charismatic wrestlers that they have. If not the best, like the best charismatic one of the best.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So I mean, is it a little redundant with Sayaki this? Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. But I enjoy his promo work. In the ring, he can get a little bit better. It's early on for him or whatever. But promo wise, that's half the battle, if not more than half the battle. So good for Sonny.
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely, even his backstage interviews with Goldilocks, those are always super entertaining because she plays into it as well. And like, I don't know, I agree with that. I think he's really, really good. He's definitely, and I like the way you approach this too, of like this guy. So I think if we really had to pick like one or two couple people, I think you really nailed that on the head with specific people as far as who's the best promo.
I think that's a major weakness with TNA is they have a bunch of good wrestlers. I mean, the X Division alone, you have a handful or maybe even 2 handfuls of really good workers. I think the problem is that there's just not a lot of people that are good talking.
Yeah, I mean, do we have
some people are stuck in 1998? BG James, with the cutting their promos.
He's bad, but I didn't even want to bring up the Amazing Red sit down interview with Mike Tenay. That was just super awkward.
So bad.
Like that was really rough.
Yeah, that was like a kindergartner introducing themselves on the first day in front of everybody.
Dude, it definitely was. That's like when you have to give like a class presentation and you're like, yeah, like I think I did it pretty good. Like, it's not bad. And the teacher's like, can you speak up a little bit? It's like, well, like I mean, it's good.
I used to hate fucking doing that shit. Class
So
presentation, so bad.
so did I.
I once failed the class because I didn't realize every project was a presentation. So every time I didn't do it, so I failed. And the next year, I was like, it was either that or art. And I'm like, well, I can't do anything art wise, so I had to retake it and I had to do the presentations.
Oh my god. Good shit. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, no, I think we kind of hit it on the head with those. I think we kind of those are definitely the best ones. I think we should really reconsider that Jeff Jarrett promo at the end of the show, but
right.
Definitely should. But anyway,
maybe in 2003 his babyface work will be better as a promo. But I'm telling you, every fucking promo he cut was just, "I'm coming for the gold, and you ain't gonna stop me. I hate you, Jackie Fargo, Bob Armstrong, and then I'm gonna hit you with a chair."
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even say slap nuts.
No, he didn't do anything, and that kind of goes into, I feel like, what we've sort of discussed before of like, okay, does he not have the guitar because he's trying to get away from that just to, I don't know, I don't want to say evolve himself more, but like, is he trying to do something different? Is that why he's not using his catchphrases in guitar? Because he probably should be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely he should be. But
yeah. Well, next up here, we have the Rookie of the Year. And I think there's a lot of really great options for this.
Right.
And I also,
so technically, every single person wrestling is a rookie in terms of TNA.
So that's the thing. Yeah, which is really, really crazy because you think about people like, name anyone on the roster and it's like, oh, they're not a rookie. And it's like, well, they are, because if you didn't watch TNA, do you think that you would know who half of these people are? No. In 2002. Right. You wouldn't know any of these people. And even if you watch the show, you don't know half of these people.
No, absolutely.
So a couple I have down. I made, once again, a list of, and I think that this is definitely going to be able to be expanded on. And in fact, I'm going to start off right now. I'm adding Sonny Sayaki to my list because I didn't have him in this particular category.
I would agree with that.
But I have Amazing Red.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been a pretty big standout. AJ Styles, I don't know how you couldn't say him. But see, he's teetering on he's been working for a few years. Is he still considered a rookie?
So here's my thing. Okay. If they had exposure in any of the major wrestling companies, I disqualified them.
That's fair.
AJ Styles had a couple appearances in WCW. Now, realistically, would a lot of people remember that? Probably not. But he still was on Nitro and Thunder for a month and a half or whatever. So I kind of take that out of the equation.
I think that's fair.
Like Jerry Lynn was in ECW for 6 years or whatever. So,
oh yeah, no, Jerry Lynn is not on my
4 years. So yeah, that's out of the equation. So to me, it's like you're watching TNA. You've literally never seen these people before in your entire. Not even a blimp of, oh, I saw him on WWF Jacked. Like, no, you probably didn't. So that's how I was kind of approaching it.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And I think that's a really fair point. I guess the way in my head I was saying it was like a quote, like known name. So that's why like Jerry Lynn couldn't do it. Whereas like Styles, even if he did kind of have that, he wasn't necessarily known still. But I agree with you for sure.
No, I mean, AJ Styles realistically is probably an indie darling.
Well, I think that kind of goes with my next one, which was Low-Ki.
Low-Ki for sure is an indie darling, yeah.
So same idea. But then my last one, which I'm still sort of split on, but I think as we watched, for me, was Ace Steel, because I didn't know who Ace Steel was before this, and I really came to enjoy his work. And unfortunately, I wish it was more. And that's why it's tough for me to say he's like the rookie of the year, because it was not very long. But for me, I really enjoyed seeing him and like learning him. But I think those few people are some pretty good picks there.
Well, Ace Steel started strong with his appearances, and then he just plummeted once Plumtree went with Styles.
Exactly.
And he wasn't necessarily very successful in the match that he had. But that's a good mention. I only had a couple. Sayaki is a good one. Amazing Red, obviously, as well. And then America's Most Wanted is a duo. Now, I know some people are going to be like, Bob, Chris Harris was on WCW Worldwide in 2000.
I'll see.
Or Chris Harris was on WCW Saturday Night in 2000. And you're right. But you know what? Who the fuck watched WCW Worldwide in 2000 or WCW Saturday Night in fucking 2000? The answer is absolutely fucking nobody. Worldwide was syndicated. I don't even know if we got it in Syracuse. I sure as hell never watched it as a kid, at least at that point. So even if he was on that, and even if you happen to watch Chris Harris against Shane Douglas on Worldwide, you ain't gonna remember that Chris Harris was the guy that lost to Shane Douglas. It ain't happened. So I don't want to hear it.
See, that's like some funny shit, though. That's good.
Yeah.
No,
there's plenty of young talent that TNA can stake claim and saying, hey, we kind of gave these guys their first exposure. Christopher Daniels would be another one. Even though I know he had one WCW appearance, he's been on a couple of Jacked and metal episodes on WWF. But you know what? That doesn't count because back then he had hair. He's bald now. There's no way you could tell it was him.
It's essentially a different guy at that point.
That's what I think.
I mean, that's fair. See, I wouldn't put Daniels in it this year because I feel like he didn't do enough to be considered a Rookie of the Year. He had like 3 or 4 appearances, but maybe next year.
Right. I mean, if you base off of success, I think it's Amazing Red.
I think realistically, yes.
Even though A&W did win the tag titles, but I would say Amazing Red.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, I think it kind of has to be, especially to see how. I feel like when you first saw him, was he actually going to end up lasting? And now to see where he's kind of started to climb up the X division. Yeah. Essentially, I think it's an easy pick there. And that leads us to our next category, which I'm still a little weird one for me, which is the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year. Now, we discussed this off air, I believe, the last time we recorded. And to the point, we're probably going to have the same things because I literally was like, wow, that's such a good idea. I'm writing that down. And I literally could not think of anything else. So when you think of, the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year, what's that mean to you?
I would say, like a heroic action or do a deed that would be like, oh wow, I want to go do that too.
And are you thinking in ring, outer ring, both like combined, or strictly kayfabe, like on screen work?
Oh, okay, so I was taking it as on screen, and mine's not even a wrestler.
Oh, well, I'm excited to hear that then.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let me just mention mine, and if I steal your thunder because we already discussed it, I'm sorry. But I wrote down the SATs, as we discussed. Listen, 17-hour bus ride, brother.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The dedication, and Amazing Red for that, too. And now, Amazing Red, I say it for a little differently, because I think Amazing Red is the kind of like babyface underdog who you're like, come on, like just get that win. And then he gets that win, and it's like, oh my God, like, yeah. And so I think he's a really good pick in that sense. And then the last one I picked, see, this one, it's kind of weird, but I almost feel like it's the same. And I said Jerry Lynn, and I say that because I feel like, I don't know, there's something like very wholesome about Jerry Lynn. I feel like
really, okay.
I'm like, oh, he's such a nice guy.
Right. Meanwhile, he's attacking people at fucking shops. He finds AJ Styles and throws him in a bathtub. Are you fucking kidding me? He's a good dude.
Maybe it's when he does the promos with his little cheater glasses on, and he just looks like a nice dad. Maybe that's why I keep thinking that. But I think the most realistic option that I have, I think, is probably Amazing Red again, because he's a really, really good underdog, and I think that he's the kind of guy that you want to cheer for, and when they finally get that win, it actually means something.
No, that's good. That's SATs and Amazing Red, just for their willingness to go on those long bus rides. Especially Red for the one where he showed up, got attacked, and then didn't do anything.
While he was injured, he had to come.
Yeah, he was clearly limping because of his fucked up heels, and they're just like, okay, well, just ride down here, and then we'll just do an injury angle with you. Yeah, that was a bit much. Mine is not a wrestler. I guess you can say the most inspirational character, and I'm gonna say Goldilocks, largely because I think she's one of the first non-wrestling female characters that stood up for herself. The character. I would hope that no one actually would, well, I guess they did, because she said in the interview that there was sometimes that some shady shit was going on, I guess, or attempts to.
Yeah.
But for the character wise, if somebody were to give her attitude or disrespect her, she would not back down. And I know that I'm not a woman, but if I were to be watching it as a 13-year-old boy, I kind of feel as if maybe other teenage boys watching it would be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this stuff to a woman, because maybe they will then slap me or they'll put me in my place. So instead of kind of being the prototypical woman character where they take the abuse, like they're barking like a dog in the ring, or they're wrestling in a gravy bowl or a mud pit, Goldilocks is the type of character where she's going to say, go fuck yourself. I have a job to do. I'm not going to belittle myself or let you sexually objectify her. So that to me is kind of inspiring to see that approach to a female character that we don't normally see. That's probably a weird connection coming from a 31-year-old male, but that's kind of what I took from it.
I think, Bob, that was such a good answer. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, how, like that, I didn't even think outside of the box of just people in ring necessarily. So I think that's, in that case, I totally agree with you, because
my second one was going to be 6-Pac for managing to bang April or whatever her name is.
What you inspire to be. Yeah. Well, no, Goldilocks is a really great answer, though. And I'm not going to elaborate further, because you literally said everything that I would just repeat. So I think in that sense, I think it's a really good point. I think I agree with you completely. Her standing up for herself in the promos also like adds to those interviews and adds to the segments. And we noticed it in the very first pay-per-view that it was like, okay, we like her. It wasn't like an annoying backstage interviewer. Like, we immediately liked Goldilocks.
She's a strong character, and you have that banter. So when Sonny Sayaki is like sexually harassing her, right?
She's making faces and
right. He whispers something in her ear. She says something back to him. So then there's that banter, right? And then you're building, I guess in some way, you're building heat between them. So the next week when she interviews him, you're like, what the fuck's going to happen here with Goldie and Sonny? Instead of being like, oh, great, now Sonny's just going to disrespect her. She's going to cower back. Like, oh, God, I'm sorry, whatever. No, it's going to be like, oh, fuck, okay, what the? Yeah, try Goldie.
Yeah.
Try.
And it did happen a lot with especially Sonny Sayaki and her, to the point where they built it up to be like Sonny Sayaki was like, oh, you're going to be my valet because you want to go on a date with me. And she was like, what? And he's like, yeah, but they said no. And just like they continually built on that story too. And I think as we continue to see Goldilocks grow into the role of in transitioning from an interviewer into a manager eventually, I think it's gonna be really interesting, because I personally have not really seen, at least off the top of my head, any of her work as a manager. So I'm really excited to kind of see that transition happen.
Yeah, and my written reviews for the TNA weekly pay-per-views, which I'm trying to do before we get there.
You did pretty good. I just saw you post a December one.
Yeah, I'm actually up to February of 2004. I take a while before I post stuff. Yeah, so I'm like just at the beginning, really, of her transition into a, manager outside of a interview aspect. And let me tell you, as a Jezebel, I guess you would say, she does a promo. I'm not gonna get too much into it because we're at least 2 years away. But she does a promo with a gentleman that I thought was fantastic. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I thought it was really, really good. Well, like very much Attitude Era type of content. but she delivered it maturely. I thought it was really good.
And she, when she was doing that, she was playing a heel role, right? She wasn't a babyface. Yeah. So actually just I think it was yesterday I listened to it. I listened to her interview she did with Lance Archer or Lance Hoyt in TNA land, and she mentioned, she's like, hey, if you ever need someone to come into AEW, I really want to be a really badass heel because I know I can do a good job. And she's like joking around. So I mean, why not?
I wouldn't be opposed to Lance Archer being like, yo, here's my girlfriend, or or whatever. Like if Jake Roberts couldn't do it anymore, I think Goldilocks could fit in very well with that. Absolutely.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah. I'd be down. I'd be into it. Cool. No, that was your answer was way better than mine. I like that.
I mean, I think taking a 17-hour bus ride from that's inspiration. I don't honestly. If I was, I mean, I obviously not a wrestler, never have been, nor did I ever want to be. But if I wanted to be a basketball player, I don't know if I would want to take a 17-hour bus ride to the next game. I'd probably be like, you know what, guys,
I'm gonna skip out.
I'm gonna skip this one. I'll come back for the next homestand. All right, see you guys later. Like, that'd be very difficult. I just don't have the patience for that shit.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely. I think so. I think here's where we're seeing two different versions of this, right? So like Amazing Red and SATs. I mean, I don't need to repeat everything I just already said, but I think Goldilocks's inspiration part, like you just brought up, I think extends outside of the realm of like wrestling land. Because if like, like you said, if a kid is watching it, or even, especially in 2002, and you're seeing this strong woman stand up for herself. I mean, that's a different thing of like, then, I want to see Amazing Red win this match because he's like the underdog, tiny thing. Two different ends of the spectrum, but both I think fit very well into this category.
I think so too. I do.
Well, next up we have the most improved of the year, and this one, I feel like I'm going to keep saying this, but I feel like I struggled coming up with one. I was like, okay, who really? I mean, so many people were so good. Like who improved throughout the year? So you want to go ahead first on this one, Bob?
Yeah. So I'm kind of comparing this to, prior to 2002. I was actually pretty annoyed by this wrestler. Not really anything to do with their actual wrestling, more so because they had about 17,000 belt buckles on their fucking jeans. So you just hear jingle bells the entire time they wrestled. I want to say Ron Killings was one of the most improved in-ring or character, however you want to say. I think within the first 10 weeks, he stood out far and above a lot of the other guys that they were trying to elevate at the time. So if you were to compare his WWF run, which was very short and not very memorable at all, he was really super green, to where, he had that match with Jeff Jarrett, which was probably Jeff Jarrett's best match in TNA to this point.
Yep.
I think he should definitely get a mention for being part of the most improved. And I mean, I couldn't off the top of my head think of many other people that improved. I mean, Sayaki in ring, I don't think he's necessarily improved. He's been average throughout most of the time, and I think a lot of that has to do with he's kind of in a division that doesn't fit him or his style very well. So I can't really say he's improved on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on Killings for sure, and everything you said about him. I mean, especially if you're comparing it to what he did before this, but even throughout this run, I mean, it's been pretty solid work. I did also have Sonny Sayaki on my list, and I guess for me it was kind of like, it's similar to how I felt about Ace Steel, where Sonny Sayaki turned from like a nobody to someone that I really, really enjoyed liking. And I was more aware of Sonny Sayaki than I was Ace Steel before doing this podcast. But I think for that alone, like he kind of rose and he's showing his personality more and more every week. And then he eventually just won the X Division title. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you look at it even just that way, he's went from doing random tag matches and stuff, he's kind of climbed up, and now he's the X Division champion. So even in a sense like that. I also, once again, I kind of already said the reason why, but I had the Amazing Red on this one as well because, just like I mentioned, he kind of went from someone who I feel like they kind of just brought in to like job to Loki to someone who's now like a TNA mainstay. He's on every show and he's always there. So I think in that, I mean, his work has always been pretty solid, I would say. Now
He has a big win over AJ Styles too.
yeah, and he's had some really really great matches. So I put him on this list as well. And actually, I was just thinking of a couple others as well as we were talking. I did put America's Most Wanted.
I would as well.
Tag teams because I think same reasons they rose to the top of the X division, or sorry, Jesus, the tag team division, and went from we got attacked in the tournament where we should have really realistically been the first champions to then winning them, and then now they we'll get into feuds and stuff after, but of course they have this great feud with the New Church, and I mean really just solid workers. And I actually, after you just mentioned comparing people's prior work, I thought about Malice because I think Malice is someone who he's the kind of guy where it's like, I wanna really badly consider him like a rookie in TNA, but you can't because he was very very present on WCW television. But it's so different. It's like the same thing. He has hair now. Daniels lost his hair. Now Malice has hair, and he looks scarier. So it's a different guy. But so I think if we're talking comparing their old work to what they're doing in TNA, I feel bad not saying Malice. And I think in the same regard, even though it's much much shorter lived, and I wouldn't even consider it in the top 5, is Tempest because I think he was a pretty badass for the few weeks that we got to see him. Compared to, I mean, I didn't mind Crowbar, but compared to the Crowbar character, it's very different.
Yeah, the Malice one's a pretty good one. That's a good, like hidden gem one. Maybe not a lot of people would have thought of that. I didn't think of Malice. I think that's a good pick. Even though I mean, most improved for sure. He's kind of been saddled with some bullshit though. Likely why he's not been back on a regular basis, but
yeah, well, that's the bummer part, and that's why I think if we're kind of looking all around, it almost kind of has to be. I think Killings is a really really good choice for that, just because I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you said, and even if you just look at his TNA run, he's improved. I mean, he won the title and everything.
And I think the same can be said with AMW. I mean, within 2 months, Chris Harris went from a scrawny guy to somehow finding muscles, likely because he found something over the counter at GNC, I would imagine. But I mean, they as a duo have kind of gone away from the hokey fake bullets in their guns and that bullshit to being like riled up and we're gonna brawl around ringside, have some hard fought matches, like a bar fight. Like that's kind of the vibe I get from them. Like they're about to have a bar fight every time they go out there. So
yeah, and I think when I was trying to think of this category too, I'm sitting here and I'm like I feel like the people who have had solid work have continually had solid work. So it's like where did they improve? Like what actually got better? I wish I could have been like, oh yeah, Jeff Jarrett. Like Jeff Jarrett got so much better throughout this year, but like he didn't. And, people like that. I wish that we almost saw something more obvious. And I think Killings and like America's Most Wanted and Amazing Red, those like 3 grouping of people, I think have really shown. If you look over all the shows, you can see a trend of them getting continually better as far as the card goes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The next one is Comeback of the Year. There's probably a few to put for this one too.
I actually had a really hard time with this one.
I thought this was one of the easier ones.
Oh no, this one I was once again. I'm sitting here like, who the hell left and came back? Damn it! I had a really hard time. So actually, the top choice I picked for this one was specifically Low-Key joining Sports Entertainment Extreme, and I specifically picked Low-Key because I feel like he was becoming one of the most popular X Division stars for a while, and then he disappeared obviously just the Japan work and on budget cuts, blah blah blah, and he couldn't dedicate the time and everything. And now he's back, and I feel like due to his popularity being gone before he was gone, and then coming back, I think yeah, that's why I wouldn't say Skipper or Daniels necessarily. That's why I think Loki potentially has that comeback for me, and I think that's the one that kind of stuck in my head the most on this one.
Well, I have three. And
Let's
it
hear
has
'em.
nothing. And it has nothing to do really with returning to TNA. So let me
See,
explain.
maybe this is my problem. Maybe I'm thinking too much in TNA land.
You're too much in that. Maybe you're too much in the bubble. So comeback of the year usually means, something monumental happened to them health wise or personal wise, whatever the case is. No, I'm not going to say Buff Bagwell because he's I'm going to fucking quit and then I'm going to come back and lose to Apollo. I'm not saying Buff. Instead, this guy suffered a knee injury towards the end of his WWF career, was fired, became healthy, and I believe around this February, March of 2002, and has proceeded to have countless great matches in TNA. Former X Division champion, Jerry Lynn.
Yeah.
Shit that this guy's been doing coming off of a mega knee injury, really less than a year before the debut of TNA. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one, and I guess I wish I did think a little bit more out of the TNA bubble, because it's like when I'm looking through this, like, where does Jerry Lynn fit in? He's not a rookie. He's, he's not the most improved necessarily. So, and I think how you just said, like, I mean, Jerry Lynn's matches here, especially in early TNA, have been, I mean, without them, like, what is the X Division? You take Jerry Lynn out, would we have seen some of these classic matches that we saw? Because he's involved in most of them.
Yeah, I think he's a very underrated X Division guy that doesn't get, I think, the credit for the first couple of years of the X Division. A lot of people want to be like, oh, AJ Styles and Daniels, Samoa Joe, or whatever. And it's like, guys, Jerry Lynn was there. So it's like, he was there day one for many, many years. So a lot of memorable stuff. My second one is kind of like, he was part of ECW, was in WCW for a minute, and then nothing. WWE doesn't pick him up. He's just doing random indies, I guess. And he's coming in, and he's just having, I would say, definitely one of my top 5 favorite guys. He should be teaming with Easy Money. I'm going to say Kid Cash.
Yeah.
For comeback of the year. Now, people are going to be like, well, Bobby, he didn't really go anywhere. I'm like, yeah, he did. In a national sense, like a nationally televised company, which, I mean, TNA being on pay-per-view maybe isn't nationally televised, but it's readily available. He's still performing at a very high level. So coming back from kind of being obscure, following ECW's demise, I think Kid Cash has done a great job so far.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that one either. And I think he's another guy where it's kind of like, for me, like, I really have been enjoying his work, especially in this early stuff we're watching. And, like, where does he fit in? It was, once again, right. He's not really a rookie, and he's not, it's the same kind of thing I just said about Jerry Lynn. So where does Kid Cash fit in? And I think what you just said, once again, I think, if you see the trend here, we've seen it throughout the podcast. If you've been listening since the beginning, Bob likes to talk me into things. I'll say a show was not bad, and Bob goes, Dallas, it was bad. And I have to say, okay, you're right, it was bad, as Bob chokes. Yeah. But I think you're doing it right now. You're doing it right now during our last show covering 2002, and you're switching my opinions once again.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. And then my last one is Christopher Daniels. I know you kind of said he maybe doesn't apply to it, but to me he does a little bit, because I want to say in your notes that they weren't really sure if they wanted to use him, or he seemed very they were very dismissive.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was Jarrett, if I remember correctly, didn't want to use like him, and I think it was Loki, and I think a lot of it had to do with their schedules in Japan and such, if I remember right. But and I know you're going to continue on, but I think this is a great point too. If someone isn't wanting to be, if they don't want to use him, and then they talk him into being used, and now, I mean, you're in essentially the top angle. I mean, that's pretty big. That's pretty big.
Yeah, so you go from being unwanted to being brought in, and then realistically, for almost the next 9 years consecutively, are a major part of the company's history. So I think that's a pretty big comeback, coming from week 3 to being like, well, we're not going to use you, whatever, and coming in, being part of that great 6-man tag to end the year, being in the top heel group. You're sitting pretty right now if you're Christopher Daniels. So for me, that was another comeback, because it seemed as if they were more interested in using Low-Ki than they even were for Christopher Daniels. It was more like Low-Ki, once you can let us know what you're doing. Daniels is like, well, I mean, if we have room, maybe we'll figure something.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like that to me. And you know what? I think now I'm thinking a little bit more. I think the same could be said about Elix Skipper in a way for a comeback, because he had his run in WCW, which wasn't necessarily bad. I enjoyed his work there as well. And for me, Elix Skipper was a TNA guy, and that's just because I never really saw a lot of WCW when I was younger, and I saw TNA. And so I think once you see that, and you kind of see, okay, he didn't get picked up by the WWE or whatever, and then now he's getting used in TNA in some really solid matches, and the same thing applies here. He left, he came back, and now and Low-Ki.
I think that's probably the whole purpose of the group, or that trio. And I wonder if I feel like Russo hinted at it maybe in his promo, or will eventually.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think he did mention how they didn't want to use. I think specifically he mentions Low-Ki, like, yes. Oh, they didn't want to use you. So these guys were getting held back this whole time, and now they're with Russo, and they're going to get used right, he says, and all that kind of stuff. So I think those are really great.
I think that's a trio that should get heavily pushed in 2003.
I'm hoping they do.
I think
and more than just in like the X Division capacity.
Well, that's what I'm saying by put. I mean, I would try to elevate them upward.
I agree.
As a trio. I don't think you can really limit them in size. The only Low-Ki may have that because he is kind of a he's a small guy. But if you push him kind of similar to how Tajiri, for instance, has been pushed with his kicks and stuff like that, I think you could get there.
I think it could work.
Yeah.
Well, I think even early on, we even talked about the idea of like Low-Ki and Ken Shamrock.
Right.
It's like, and I think that is a really cool idea that I wouldn't have thought about before. But
I think a Low-Ki Jeff Jarrett match is a one-off at least or something. I mean, with maybe a couple of weeks build-up, Jarrett kind of selling the kicks. If this guy were to knock out Jeff Jarrett with a kick to the head, stand tall with the belt, as a kid, and even as a 31-year-old, I'd be like, what the one kick and this guy knocks out Jeff Jarrett? Mm-hmm. It could be a new world champion. That's all you do. One kick.
Yeah, and Jarrett's like scared of the kicks and stuff. And
yeah, the first match, he's like, oh shit, fuck, oh god.
Yeah.
He kicks the guitar. If he has the guitar, he just smashes it with his kicks. It's like, well, fuck, that didn't work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So
yeah, for sure.
I think there's a lot they could potentially do with it.
Yeah,
with him specifically. Definitely. The next one is Manager of the Year. This has to be one of the easiest ones we got, right?
I think so too. But just for fun, we're going to talk about a bunch of managers right now that we forgot about, just to jog our memory a little bit. So let's think. Okay, so we started out with a lot.
There was Bobcat.
We had Fluff Dup.
Oh my God, yeah, Fluff.
Yeah, you remember her? We have April, Priscilla.
Yeah.
Mortimer Plumtree.
Yeah. Joel Gertner.
Yeah. Oh man, who were some other long lost managers we had? That was most of the good ones.
We have Trinity, right? Technically,
Trinity is a manager. So yeah, I agree with that one.
Belladonna. Yeah.
And if anyone can't tell, we're avoiding the obvious.
Yeah. The girl with Sayaki, potentially.
Oh, Desire.
I'm going to
count that. I'm counting that.
Too. Um,
I think we got a lot of the forgotten ones out of the way.
I think that might be pretty much it, aside from the one that we're not talking about.
Yeah, okay. So we can all say it now. The best manager of the year was Father
Father
James
James
Mitchell.
Mitchell. Yeah.
I mean, I literally didn't even list anyone else. Like that was.
There's no one else.
And
anybody that tries to say, "Oh, Mortimer Plumtree," go fuck yourself. There's no way.
No, and Father James Mitchell he doesn't just win that by default. He's actually a good manager.
Yeah. Like he's not the best of the worst options. He's the best.
Yeah, and he's good on the promos. He's like fit. I mean, he plays his part so well, and just his group in general, everything about it is perfect.
Yeah.
And he's so good. He is still doing it in 2020 on Impact. I just watched it last night, and he was on my TV, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Regardless, he's still doing it.
Yeah, I think he's a great character, and he's a very good. He could be another promo guy.
Absolutely.
So.
Now, some of the shit he says doesn't make too much sense, but that's part of the fun.
I mean, do I understand half of it? No, but I'm also not a Satanist, so.
Exactly. Cool. Well, that was definitely one of the easiest, as you said, which now brings us to the feud of the year, which I have a couple listed, and I'd like to maybe talk through this, and I bet you have similar ones down, and I think that we can try to figure out which one do we actually think is the best feud of the year here. Because there were some pretty good ones. There's a lot of bad ones, but we're going to not talk about that. So I'll start off with, I think, one that I just brought up not too long ago as well, which was America's Most Wanted in the New Church.
Right.
I think it's one of the strongest feuds, arguably one of the longest so far.
It's one of the few that actually have a story.
Exactly. And that goes into, after the New Church left and they returned and the evil was coming and all that kind of stuff. And then they attacked him. They eventually won the belts from America's Most Wanted. And, just in general, I mean, they're still feuding as of the end of 2002 and it's been going on for a while. And it's really good stuff. They have really fun matches and stuff like that. Second, I think, is also one of the more obvious ones, and that is Jerry Lynn and AJ Styles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you really look at it, it kind of started week 2 when they won the tag belts together, and they built from there.
Yeah, the only negative with that is that they rushed the entire thing.
They wicked rushed it. Within 2 weeks, they were beating each other up.
I mean, the day they won the tag titles, I feel as if Jerry Lynn kind of gave him a side eye. Like, what the fuck was that about?
Yeah, I think you might be right about that.
Yeah, so and then it turned to a whole respect thing, and they kind of just.
Yeah, there was a lot going on with that. Yeah, there's a lot with that.
Some great matches.
Oh, absolutely. And I also have now this one you could look at 2 different ways. I have The Truth versus Jeff Jarrett. And now I see that you could look at this as Jeff Jarrett and the NWA title is more realistic of what it actually is.
I think that's what it is, yeah.
I mean, I think that is the story.
There wasn't a lot directly between Jeff and Killings.
No, I agree. And that's why I think it is kind of more or less like a Jeff Jarrett and the title kind of thing.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think that it was potentially one of the stronger points of the year. And then finally, my last one I have written down, it hasn't happened long, but it's really good, is Sports Entertainment Extreme, essentially versus TNA, the NWA.
Yeah, see, I think that's going to be the no-brainer for 2003 already.
It feels like it.
Yeah, that's what I kind of think. I didn't mention that one because it is like 2 weeks in, but yeah.
Yeah, it's early, but yeah. So those are the 4 I have written down. So what do you have, Bob?
Well, I wrote down 2, and they were AMW against New Church and Jerry Lynn against AJ Styles. For me, the feud of the year is Lynn versus Styles. The whole "you're gonna respect me" type of thing. It's a simple story. AJ played the bratty young guy that thinks he can do whatever he wants really well, and Jerry Lynn's like, "I'm a veteran. You're gonna fucking respect me." And they proceed to have some great brawls. Constantly good matches. Did they maybe have too many matches one after the other? Probably, because I know they had one in November that was just thrown out there, like whatever. And then the 3 in a row ladder matches it felt like that they had.
Yeah, which is a funny point. I mean, I'll just tell the story now. I mean, I was going back to some of our episodes for to kind of see what we thought about the show in general, right?
Yeah.
And literally at the end of like three of them, we're like, "What the fuck? Another ladder match?" And it was just so funny because that's literally what it was like for a while, where it literally was like, why are they doing another ladder match?
Yeah.
But no, I agree. I think if we had to really narrow down one, I think Jerry Lynn and AJ Styles is probably the most realistic. With America's Most Wanted, then the New Church a real close second. I would
Yeah.
think we'd have to say, and I think that just kind of has to go with the fact that it has a story to it, and not a lot of stuff that we're watching right now does.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mindset was. A&W New Church is a underrated feud. I think in general for TNA.
Absolutely, and even Chris Harris on Twitter, on one of the things he retweeted, was mentioned how like they helped like kind of put them on the map as like a tag team.
Yeah.
Like they really helped them out. So I think in general right there makes it a big enough deal. I mean, especially if you're like Brian Lee, who's been around for years and years, and you're helping two guys who pretty much no one has seen. I mean, there's some pretty big stuff there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot has. I would give a lot to Slash too. He has a
Absolutely.
relatively new character. Anytime that guy bleeds, it looks amazing. He bumps like crazy for these guys. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that as well.
Yeah, I think I would say that Slash is in general like he kind of came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah,
I would almost say he's underrated. Like people,
sure.
if, you're not gonna if we go talk to Austin later, you think he's gonna know who the fuck Slash is? No,
No,
he just had no idea. And Austin's a diehard wrestling fan as well, but he doesn't know who Slash is.
no, he does not. What about most popular wrestler of the year?
All right, so this one was tough for me too. I know I keep saying that, but I did really have a hard time with this one because it's kind of like how do you go about this one? So I kind of did two different ways here, and I think both are relatable, right? So my first one, I'll say that the more normal one first. I'm going to say Jerry Lynn, and I feel like the crowd has just been always really into his matches, really into him, and they're always loud for him. So that's the quick version of that. Now the same goes for the next guy though, and this is where it gets kind of weird for me, and that is Jeff Jarrett. Cause
No way.
listen, the fans in the TNA Asylum fucking love Jeff Jarrett. So,
No.
I mean, if we're
Nope.
talking, you can say no you want, but if you're listening to the audio on these shows, the fans are cheering for this dude wicked loud.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right about that. Okay. So what? 400 fans that got free tickets to a TNA show at the Nashville Fairgrounds. They love Jeff Jarrett. Okay. What about the other 8,500 that are buying it at their from their living room? Okay. They all are booing them, and I'm one of them.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes.
Even as a babyface, like, no, I want this guy to get his ass kicked. He is annoying as all hell.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. And that's
You
why
better not, man, because you know what? For the next fucking 5 years, maybe even longer, that I got to fucking deal with this Planet Jarrett bullshit, where it's just like, oh, I'm gonna beat fucking everybody. Like I'm telling you, man, the more that this goes on, and the more people that he beats that he shouldn't beat at given times, I'm gonna get fucking real pissed.
Well, yeah, I mean it's gonna happen.
I know. I already know.
So okay. Well, actually,
I've already gotten mad from this one time watching it as it happened. Now I'm gonna get PTSD from doing it again.
Yeah. Well, here I got another choice too. I think Jerry Lynn's a pretty good one still, but I think we could also throw in America's Most Wanted in this category as well. As like a tag team. I mean, the fans really do
I
like
think
them.
that their connection with the fans has definitely.
I think they've always had that, but I still think overall, for me, it's probably Jerry Lynn.
I'm surprised you didn't say AJ Styles.
He's been a heel the whole time. Fans haven't been cheering him.
It's okay, but it could be your most popular wrestler.
Well, if it's my most popular, then I'm gonna. Okay, so if it's who I think is the most popular, who I like the most, I'm still gonna say Jerry Lynn. So,
Okay, great.
So there you go. I mean,
I said Jerry Lynn as well. Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, AJ Styles is great, but I also said Jerry Lynn because you know what? He has the best middle rope leg drop guillotine ever. So hopefully we'll see that every week in 2003 as well.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, easy enough there. So, I mean, that brings us to the next one. Before we get into some of the harder categories, and that is the most hated. So, I'm just going to say it out of the...
Jeff Jarrett.
So, here's the thing, is I put Jeff Jarrett in the most popular and the most hated.
I feel, that doesn't surprise me. That does not surprise me.
He's not the only one in the category, though.
Fuck Jeff Jarrett.
I also put Vince Russo.
Okay.
Which is a very fair assessment.
That would be very fair. Yeah.
I also put Mortimer Plumtree.
Oh, yeah.
Because I especially am really sick of seeing him.
Yeah.
And I think he's a very hateable manager. And finally, and you might have picked this one with me, the Harris brothers.
Sure. Yeah, man. For me, it would be, all those. Fuck it. Yeah, every single person that you mentioned, most hated.
Like if I had to, if I'm picking one off of this list, that if I never have to see him ever again in my entire life, it's the Harris brothers.
Yeah.
To the point where like we groan when they come on, no matter what they do, and it's not even just because they're essentially Nazis who wear Nazi T-shirts to the ring. It's because they're not good.
They've never been good.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
And they continually get jobs in wrestling. I don't understand. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and you know what? I hope they're very nice backstage because in the ring, man, they play good heels because they got go away heat with me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean,
so much that Bob's yawning because he hates Harris Brothers so much. He's falling asleep.
I can't think of one good Harris Brothers match.
Yeah, if you have a good Harris Brothers match, you can go ahead and send it to us on Twitter at CrossTheLineTNA, and then I will like the tweet, and then I'll say, I bet you it sucks, and then I'll watch it, and I bet it's going to suck.
Yeah, there's just no way.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No.
But yeah, I think those are probably our top grouping. I think for a while there, you probably could have said that, like, Ron Killings was the most hated, because when he was a heel, it was like, oh yeah, I want to boo you. But, like, we liked the shit so much, I couldn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, he would come out and even the crowd would be like, yeah, Ron Killings. And then he'd be like, you guys are hillbillies. And they're like, yeah, we are. Yeah, you're right.
I think Styles really, he tried almost too hard to be the most hated. I feel like he's very cocky and but like it doesn't work.
It's impossible. It's impossible to boo a guy like AJ Styles. Okay. Anytime a guy can come off the top rope and do a spiral tap or a springboard 450 or anything that's fucking insane, I can't sit here and be like, boo. If anything, I'm going to be like, what the hell? Yeah, that guy's awesome. It just doesn't work. I'm interested to see how many times in TNA that they try to make him a heel, and it just it's never going to work, ever.
No, and I think, but it's also, I think, part of just his personality. Like, I feel like there is, I mean, I know you're going to tell me to stay someone, but I think it's possible to hate someone who does cool flips because I think Styles in this case is working at how it should be worked of like, well, look how good I am. I'm super cocky and all that kind of stuff. So I think in that case, he's trying, but I think this kind of goes down to more, it's just not his personality to be hated like he's trying to be.
I'm trying to think of, okay, like Kid Cash is someone that you can hate.
See, but I think this kind of goes into, he's very good at that. His personality allows him to play a hateable guy. So that's why I think it's just Styles in general.
Right. No, I could see that. Kid Cash just has that look of being like a cocky, smug guy.
Yes.
And then AJ has his cocky smug is like over the top that you know it's not genuine.
Well, so I think that's going to bring us to something I was just going to bring up, and that is Brian Lawler. And I think that he has some potential to be on this list, but man, he's so funny still. Like,
right. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I got one more for this list. B.G. James.
Yeah, fuck that dude. I do not like B.G. James at all. And that sucks too, because that's another 6 years I got to deal with that motherfucker.
I'm hoping eventually I'm going to like him.
No.
But
no.
In 2002, it was really, really
Dude,
rough.
I am telling you right now, I don't think for his entire TNA run that he veers away from being Road Dogg.
I believe it.
I mean, that's what I think. That's what happens here. That's all he does. Just BG James, and then the group that he ends up in.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Well, we're at the hardest part, I think, Bob. The hardest 3 categories, or the top 3, if you will, as well. Which is the next one up is Match of the Year.
Yeah, so I have 2.
So I wrote a bunch down.
How many is a bunch?
I wrote 5.
Okay, that's not bad.
And
I thought you were gonna be like 22. I was like,
no, and I do have a couple more off the top of my head, but the ones I wrote down, if they come to my mind that quick, they're obviously the top. But why don't you take this one first?
Okay, so I have 2 that are written down, and then there's one in my head that I just remembered. So the one in my head I just remembered was the Amazing Red AJ Styles match from October 30th. I think that's where Red pins him. I think
I almost wrote that match down between them, and I didn't. But that match was really good.
That was a really good match. The other ones are the Lynn Styles 2 out of 3 falls match.
Oh,
that was like throughout the whole show.
That was one of my ones I didn't get a chance to write down earlier, but I knew I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, that whole thing was pretty good. And then I would say this might be really the best match out of them all. And it happened on show 2? The 4-way double elimination for the X Division Championship with Styles, Lynn, Psychosis. I don't know. I can't remember the 4th.
Loki.
Was it Loki? Okay.
Yep.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, and just for reference, that Styles Lynn best of 3 series match they did was on pay-per-view 10 on August 21st.
Right.
And that's where they had the 3 separate matches. They had a Falls Count Anywhere match, and then like a no disqualification match, and then the 10-minute Iron Man match. And I think that's got to be, I think, one on the list as well. So funny enough, my first one I wrote down was the X Division title double elimination match that Bob just mentioned from June 26th on pay-per-view number 2.
And I thought it was so good I couldn't remember all 4 competitors. So,
well, there you go. Yeah. Now I write that. I'm just going to say it now because I think that out of all of these, I might say this is probably still match of the year for me. And I say it for a couple of reasons. When we were watching this live on our second show, I was losing my shit. Like, it was crazy. Close calls, crazy moves, really great action. And not only that, it's the first X Division championship match to crown the first champion. So not only is it a good as fuck match, it also means something, and there's something to it that, that's going to set up that's setting up an entire division, that match, essentially.
Yep.
I also wrote down the NWA title match between Killings and Jarrett on November 20th, pay-per-view 22. And I write that down because, as we've said here and on previous episodes, it was probably Jarrett's best match so far. And I think that was the first Jeff Jarrett match that I really paid attention to that degree of like, okay, this wasn't his typical style. And it's, Jarrett chasing that gold this whole time, and he finally gets it. So I think it kind of goes into that. This match also means something more than just it was a pretty good match. Mm-hmm. I have Jerry Lynn versus the Amazing Red, also on the November 20th show, pay-per-view 22, for the X Division title. Those two, they killed it. They had a wicked good match. This one, I might get my dates mixed up as far as which match was my favorite, but I did put down the NWA Tag Team title match between America's Most Wanted and the New Church. I have it down pay-per-view 20, which was November 6th, but I don't know if it was the first or second match I liked the most, but this was the same show where they cut that really hot promo, and I'm pretty sure that's the match I really liked because they came out and it was just out of control.
Yeah. And the crowd was wicked into it.
Yeah. And then finally, the last match I wrote down was actually on the December 18th show, pay-per-view 26, where Daniels, Skipper, and Loki fought the Amazing Red and the SATs.
Yeah, that was a really good match.
And I think an honorable mention, I couldn't get the date quick enough, but was when we had that ranking, the X Division rankings match.
Yep.
Which we discussed during the last show as well. I can try to dig and find it, but here it is. Look at that. It is on pay-per-view number 4 on July 10th, and that was with Skipper, Daniels, Loki, Tony Mamaluke, Kid Romeo, and Jerry Lynn. That match was really good too.
Yeah, it was. I'm surprised that neither one of us mentioned the ladder match with Loki, Styles, and Lynn.
Well, I think
that's always gotten a lot of praise. It's a good match, but I don't think it's revolutionary or memorable.
Exactly. I don't think it was. I think even after we watched it, we were kind of like, oh, we expected more. And now, if you remember, I believe that was on the same show where those guys wrestled. I think they taped one of the shows before that.
Yes,
so they all wrestled. So, I mean, they were probably exhausted. So I think that kind of plays a part in that. But I agree. I mean, that's definitely one of those matches that I think was one of the better ones of the year. And I think there's a trend here. Most of what we just said were X Division matches.
Right. Yeah.
Which shouldn't really surprise anyone, I don't think. I mean, you could even say the very first match on pay-per-view number 1 was one of the best matches. Styles, Lynn, and Loki versus the Flying Elvises.
Right.
The very first match. I mean, that was really great too.
Yeah, where the Flying Elvises win. So
which is insane.
Such a dumb thing.
So yeah, like I said, if I truly have to pick one, you got a gun to my head, you're like, Dale's fucking pick a match. I'm saying that pay-per-view number 2 double elimination match for the first ever X Division champion. So
I would say Lynn Styles just because of the story.
I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah. You know what? There's a tie, baby. And you know who's in both of them? AJ Styles and Jarrett Lynn.
There you go.
Because I agree. I mean, those 3 matches. The thing that's tough about that one is that one of them happened earlier in the show while the other 2 happened later in the show.
Right, it's separated, yeah.
So technically it's a little different. But that was really good too. So you know what? It's a tie. Match of the year is a tie. And they're both X Division title matches. And they're both really great. Well, that brings us to our second to last category, which is Tag Team of the Year. Which I think could be said it's kind of obvious, if you ask my opinion.
I would hope so.
And I think I wrote 2 down though, and I think both make sense. But I think number 1, I think it's America's Most Wanted.
Buff Bagwell and Apollo. No.
Yeah, Buff Bagwell and Apollo. Yeah, they teamed once, and then Marcus went home crying. Yes, you caught me that one.
Yeah.
No, it's Chris Harris and James Storm. Come on.
Oh, right.
Now, I think an honorable mention, my second one, was the Disciples of the New Church. And I think they kind of go hand in hand. But if we're picking one team, it's got to be America's Most Wanted.
No question.
They've been a mainstay in the thing. And you think we have a lot of other really great tag teams. We have like the SATs. I mean, the Elvises were good while they were a tag team, I thought. Definitely better than when Jorge went on his own.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Hot Shots.
Hot Shots I really like as well.
So
we can never forget about the Johnsons.
No, we can.
The Dupps.
No, we can forget about those guys too. There's a lot of guys that we can't forget.
Rainbow Express.
Divine Storm.
Divine Storm.
Yeah, they can forget about them. Briscoe Brothers.
The Briscoe Brothers, technically, yeah. There's another one I just had in my tongue. Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one. Just because we really didn't have necessarily a stacked tag team division. It's still very early, and I think it'll get better kind of as time goes on as well, which I think we all will know. But Okay.
This
Well,
is the final one. This is the big one.
This is the final one, and then I got a couple fun things to talk about right before we cap it off here. But the final one, of course, is the Wrestler of the Year. And if you're following along, Bob's probably going to say, "Well, I chose not a wrestler, and I'm going to pick Bill Behrens." And he's just going to
Jim Miller,
Jim Miller, Bob Armstrong, any of those guys is definitely Bob's pick here.
Ricky
So,
Steamboat.
Bob, I'm going to make you go first on this one, so I don't get yelled at first.
Okay, so if anybody that's been following the podcast is probably thinking that Bob is going to say Jerry Lynn, which is, you know what? That's a very good answer. I love Jerry Lynn, as apparent by all the times I've mentioned Jerry Lynn. But where's the fun if I give Jerry Lynn pretty much every single singles award that I could possibly think of? There's no fun. There's no fun in that. Okay, everybody knows that Jerry Lynn's great, but I don't have him as my Wrestler of the Year. No, I do not.
Interesting.
You might be thinking Brian Lawler. He's got some great acting. He's faked a heart attack.
Brian Lawler.
Or Brian Lawler. Yeah, he faked a heart attack. You know, his girlfriend broke up, whatever. Six Pac. You might go, oh, Scott Hall. Great matches with Jeff Jarrett over and over and over and over again. But I didn't. You might be thinking Gangrel. He had that great showing in Gauntlet for the Goal.
Yeah. What a Christian York. He made an appearance.
Christian York, Joey Matthews. You know, all those guys. You know, Cheeks. So good. He broke the ring. No, it's none of those guys.
Okay.
I think that the Wrestler of the Year for TNA in 2002, who had the most consistently great matches, is a guy that when you see him about to wrestle, you're like, fuck yeah, can't wait to see this guy. It's Primetime Brian Lee. I'm kidding. It's AJ Styles. I mean, AJ Styles to me is the Wrestler of the Year for 2002. Multiple time X Division champion, tag champion. Apparently going to be going for the world title, maybe against Jeff Jarrett within a week or two into 2003, judging by his attack on him to close it out. Is he part of sex? I don't know. If I know AJ Styles, he ain't having sex before he's married. So,
oh my God,
who knows? But I think that when I think of 2002 in his singles capacity, I'm thinking AJ Styles.
Well, Bob, you might have just you might have convinced me once again to switch my answer.
Oh, who'd you have before?
I have Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, see, I love Jerry. I do. I think 2002 is AJ Styles.
Well, and I think what you just said is something I didn't. I think I kind of took it. I took this one kind of to my who do I like the most of the year instead of even just who do I like, but also what have they accomplished. And Styles winning the tag title, like you said, multiple time X Division champion. He's seemingly getting pushed to a main event scene right now. And I mean, there hasn't been a lot of bad AJ Styles matches, if any, that I can think of off the top of my head. There's been less than good, but so what? That's everyone.
I mean, we gave Jerry Lynn fucking most popular.
Yeah,
what's the difference?
That's a really great point. So you know what? I definitely agree with you. I think I got to switch that up because I think Styles he's definitely deserved it. I did have one other one down, but I'm not even going to say it now because this one's just too good.
What's the other one?
Take a guess.
Fuck. Wrestler of the Year.
They don't necessarily deserve it, but I sort of think it was fitting.
Not Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I wrote down Jeff Jarrett.
Motherfucker, no.
But listen, this is why, though. I wrote down Jeff Jarrett because he was chasing the title the whole time. He finally won it. The fans love him. So that's the difference. Jerry's like the one I really like. Jarrett was the kind of the one where it was like, I see, like the year has kind of been based around him. But realistically, it's AJ Styles.
Right, yeah. Jarrett's been forced down our throats. Jerry Lynn is more natural. And then the standout is AJ.
Yep, I agree with that. Well, we just talked about a lot of stuff, and we revisited many, many things. Now, I got a couple fun little statistics that I gathered specifically for this show. Now, at the end of every episode, me and Bob continually go, okay, What'd you like? Was it thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle? We kind of, go off of what the readers say and kind of compare and contrast. Now, I went back, as I mentioned a few episodes back, that I was going to do, so we could start to keep track because we were starting to be really bad at it, and being like, Bob, did you like that show? And it's like, I don't know, dude. I
forgot.
We watched
it's been a week. I forgot.
It's been a week, and we watched 20 hours of additional wrestling in between this one. So I can't remember if I like that specific.
The thing is, that's not even an exaggeration.
No, it's not. And it's not for me either. And that's the thing. That's why I truly do not remember some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I went back. Okay. Now, there are some shows that I'd say thumbs in the middle. Bob would say, nope, that's a thumbs down for me. There were some shows that I was like, Bob was like, it's a thumbs up. And I was like, that's a middle one for me, but tilting toward up. So, okay, you're going to think, well, how did you decide, who liked what? So essentially I averaged it, right? So if I said a thumbs in the middle and Bob said thumbs down, that's a thumbs down show. So okay. A middle essentially is void. It doesn't matter unless we both said it was a thumbs in the middle show. So technically, Bob, we had 25 shows, because week 12 was a recap show.
Right.
Out of those shows, out of 25, how many do you think were, which one should I do first? A thumbs down show.
Out of 25?
Out of 25.
I'm going to say 8.
So out of 25 shows. So, okay, so actually, before I give you the answer, how many do you think were thumbs up then?
Whatever 25 minus 8 is.
So you don't think any averaged in the middle then?
Oh, we are including middles? There is middle.
There is some middles, yes. So there are some shows that we both said is very average, very in the middle for us.
Okay. So I'm going to say there's 8 thumbs down. And
I'll
say 3 in the middle.
Okay. So you're pretty close on one of those. So I'll just give that one to you first. We had 4 shows in the middle.
Son of a bitch. Okay.
And that mean, like I said, that means that we both were like very average show. And I think one of them, we both were like, it was in the middle, but it was kind of tilting up. That still counts as a middle because we did not say it was a thumbs up show.
Right.
Okay. Now, thumbs down shows, there was 11.
I was going to say 11 instead of 8, and I didn't.
Now, I know that sounds pretty bad, which it sort of is. That being said, there are 10 shows that we said were thumbs up. So that's actually...
That's like 50-50. It's like almost right down the middle.
Which is really crazy to me. And Bob, I'll kind of try to show you this on the screen just so you can kind of get an idea. If you look, a lot of the shows that were really bad were early shows. And a lot of green came when our buddy Vince Russo came, and later in the shows. So it got really interesting. I mean, so just for fun, I won't read them all off. I mean, if you've been following the podcast, you've heard us talk about these. The first 3 shows, we gave all thumbs down. Okay.
Right. That doesn't surprise me.
Then the next 2 we gave thumbs up. Then there was 4 down in a row, and I think Bob was ready to quit. Then we had 2 in the middle. Then we had a break. Then we had another in the middle. Then it was down, up, down, up, middle, up, down, up.
Is this Xavier Woods' YouTube channel plug? Up, down, down. What the hell?
Well, you would have thought so, because it did sound like I just put a cheat code in. Yeah. But that is, so it's very interesting. And actually, Bob, and now, once again, a lot of these you might have talked me into. Actually, there wasn't too many. I think there was only a couple you've switched my direction to down. But it is very interesting to kind of go back and look at what we kind of thought about 2002. Because, Bob likes to make this joke that they all suck and they're all really bad. But when it comes down to it, it's pretty split.
Yeah, it is.
And also, that being said,
you could even say that it's more so good because
the middles,
the middles, right?
Exactly.
You're not saying you're indifferent, really.
Exactly. So that's not too bad, especially for the first year. And we also did a couple bonus shows. We covered some WWA shows. Well, those all got thumbs down. So that's not TNA though. That's a little different.
Yeah,
but just
different.
just for the fun of the statistic, they did not get very good ratings there. Now, also another really great highlight from this year, and I do not want to end this episode without bringing it up. I talked to Bob early in the year. I said, Bob, I really want to do this TNA podcast. He pretty much says he's in, right? It was super exciting. I thought we were going to sit down. We're going to watch TNA. Bob's going to shit all over it the whole time. I'm going to be little fanboying, and it was going to be a good time. Now, never did I think that me and Bob together, without anyone else, just us watching my favorite company, would have recorded over 70 hours of TNA wrestling content, which is wild.
Well, there we are.
And well, that might also, yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of shit. Now that being said, I would have never guessed that Goldilocks would have reached out to us on Twitter, and we had the opportunity to interview Goldilocks for our very first bonus episode.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I think that was, as far as this whole journey has gone since June. Every week we've been recording. The highlight was, I mean, that was one of the biggest highs for me. I think that was just kind of like outrageous.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the coolest things that we got the opportunity to do. And, it's cool to watch these shows and stuff, but being able to talk to someone who was in the arena at these shows really meant a lot to me. And it was for a good reason, as well as for her music video for the suicide prevention, but also to be able to have that experience. Me and Bob have never interviewed someone like that before. Right. So it was very out of the ordinary for us.
Yeah, usually whenever I interact with a wrestler, I get blocked.
Yeah, I don't, generally.
I do.
But, to think that we had that opportunity, I think it was really great. And to see our numbers continually grow on Twitter, we're over 1,100 followers on Twitter as of this recording, which is pretty wild to me. And to see our downloads go up, I didn't tell Bob, but we recently just broke our daily record again for downloads in a day. So that was really cool. So a lot has happened in 2002 TNA land, and in 2020 for me and Bob on the TNA Cross the Line podcast. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been listening and continues to support us. And our Twitter has been, it's been phenomenal. The people reaching out, and not even just wrestlers, but just people in general reach out and touching base with the podcast and everything. It's been really great.
Yeah. And then there's been a few people that have, and I've mentioned this before, even on IcoPod, where, they'll tag us in those, what podcast should I listen to? And they'll do the Cross the Line TNA. Stuff like that. So that stuff is always appreciated. And I hope that, people find this, informative and entertaining. As I've mentioned before, I listen to, I'm not going to say competitive podcasting because we're not competing with anybody. We're just doing this for fun. Mm-hmm. But other TNA podcasts, for this era. And I'll tell you right now, no one does the research that Dallas does with the observers and all that other stuff. No one goes and looks at the indie news that I half-assedly do. And then no one does a live watch version of this where you get a natural, the first time seeing it in my case in probably 10, 15 years. And then for Dallas, it might be the first time he's ever seen it, ever. He might have heard about it, but it might be the first time he's ever seen it.
A lot of it, yeah. And, I think that's what's kind of keeping people interested in listening to our show, between adding that extra information, whether it's behind the scenes stuff or what are these wrestlers doing between the shows. It's definitely adding more than just, it was really cool to see Jeff Jarrett win the NWA title. It's like, well, yeah, but there's more to that. There's more that's happening to that. And I think, this has been way more fun than I expected it to be. Yeah. I've had a really great time doing it. It's a lot of work, especially the social media stuff and everything. But you know what? Their interactions, like I mentioned, really make it worth it. And to be able to look on our Twitter page specifically and scroll as it tells the story of TNA wrestling, to me, it just excites me to look at that.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Really.
And that's how I really look at it. I really look at it as if it's like telling a story. You can go on our Twitter feed and you can essentially relive these shows by scrolling and kind of see what happens. And I think that's a really fun part of it. And I'd like to think that's why a lot of people do follow us and see it, because maybe not. I mean, 1,100 people on Twitter do not listen to this podcast, and that's fine. Right. But these 1,100 people are looking at these images and they're like, oh shit, okay. Jerry Lynn getting H-bombed through a table, the Bill Barons, that's interesting. Haven't seen that. You know, it just like random stuff. So it's really cool. And you know what? If you're missing out on the Twitter, I'm going to do the cheap plug now. Let me get it out of the way. We are at Cross the Line TNA on Twitter. And like we always say on other shows, if for some reason this is the first one you're listening to, we love the interactions. And same over on Facebook. We're not as active on Facebook, but I still post over there. And that's at TNA Cross the Line Pod. And then you can, of course, search us over on YouTube. By the time this episode airs, there's going to be a little extra video that I've discussed previously where I'm opening up some Impact Wrestling cards to see if I get any hits or anything inside of that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where the podcast is also posted there, as long as also being on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music. I mean, name it, we're on it.
That's great stuff. There's no excuse not to listen then at that point.
I mean, at that point, yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah. And, well, you can also listen to us with our good friend Austin Skinner with IcoPod. We've been doing WWF 95. We're getting into the Monday Night Wars. So if you enjoy us bashing on TNA 2002, and by we, I mean me, then you're going to probably enjoy Dallas and I and Austin usually trashing WWF 95. Because shockingly enough, Dallas isn't really liking WWF 95.
Yeah, I get pretty sad on that show. So if you want to hear me not be excited about something, that's a good one to listen to. And you know what? And if you want to hear Austin get really mad when we talk about the TNA Cross the Line podcast, you take a listen to IcoPod, because that dude hates it when we say this name. But don't worry, one of these next couple shows, I'm going to plug it right at the end of the show, and he's not going to expect it, and he's going to get really mad.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, you know, before we sign off, Dallas, I figured, what would be your school grade letter for the half year 2002 TNA?
Oh man, if I'm encompassing the whole time, that's really tough, because there were some really high highs and there were some really low lows.
Yeah,
I'd get, see, you're gonna yell at me. You know how I am, especially when it comes to TNA, and I want to give it a solid like C+ or a B-. That's
exactly what I was thinking, C+.
And I was thinking that because, we still got those training wheels on. We're still like trying to learn what is TNA wrestling. And I think once we kind of break that mold and kind of expand more, I think we're going to be able to raise that grade letter up a little bit. But we're definitely getting a solid C+ for effort right now. Especially, the end picked up a lot. And I think that's where a lot of that's where the plus comes in.
Right. So if I was a teacher, I'd be like C+, and then I'd have a little note, and I'd be like, I can see your improvements.
Yeah, you're trying.
I'm hopeful for next semester.
Great to have in class is like the note on the report card.
Yeah, class clown.
Yeah, because if this did really actually suck, I would have had to agree with Bob that this isn't going more than a couple weeks. But we stayed in, and now it's getting good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the last couple weeks have for sure brought my interest level to a level that I didn't think it would be for TNA, but I know for sure I'm pumped to get into 2003 and just see so many different faces come in. I'm really looking forward to that.
And you know what? I didn't tell Bob off the air, and I'm not going to. I'll tell him after we finish recording. But on the first episode of 2003, take a listen at the beginning of the show. There might be a surprise. So just keep your ears out. Listen. We've been holding on to something, and I think the first episode of 2003, it's time to break it out. So I'm really excited about that. I'll tell Bob after we hit the end button, and he'll be excited too. He
All
already
right.
knows if he thinks about it. But
I probably do know. Yeah.
oh yeah, you know. So I don't know, Bob. I think that really, I think that wraps it up. This has been a wild ride so far, and as we're gonna enjoy a few weeks to ourselves. Spoiler alert: we are not recording this on the new day, so
Right.
I'm looking forward to the slight break. But don't worry, we will still be posting content. If you didn't already, I mean, this is coming out after our bonus episode, but I'll end with this. If you did not listen to our bonus episode of WWA's The Eruption, it's a show. And if you've listened to any of our bonus episodes, you know that. And I promise you, we got 2 more WWA shows to get through, and then we will be moving on to something. We will watch something good on a bonus episode, I promise.
Yeah, we'll try at least.
Yeah, we'll try it.
No promises.
Well, I think that's it, Bob. I think it's time.
All right. Well, then for Dallas Gridley, I am Bob Colling Jr., and this has been the TNA Cross the Line podcast.